Right into it. I apologize for that. My name is Dr. Brandon Dean Beamon. I am an author and a public speaker, and I want to talk to you all about my origins and how I ended up getting to where I am today as a PhD author and a speaker. The road was very tumultuous, and I'm just going to say this. It's going to continue to be tumultuous because the higher you go, the harder things tend to get, but we're not going to stop that. We're not going to let that stop us, are we? No, absolutely not. So we're just going to get into my background and get into my origins, and I'm going to talk to you and give you all the steps that I've had to take to get to where I am. And I want to be your teacher for the moment. So, because to be honest, where I come from, I didn't have very many people guiding me through the doctoral process, or let alone till I didn't even know what a doctorate was. So I don't want you to come up hard. I want to tell you everything that you need in order to get to where you need to be. Whether or not it's a doctorate or whatever goal that you're seeking to pursue, you don't have to do this by yourself. All right, let's get into it. I'm going to see if I can share my screen here. If not, go into presentation mode. All right, the discomfort zone, the warrior's way. I don't have very much time here, so I'm going to get through this as quickly as I can. And I want to also open the floor for questions later on. Again, I am a PhD in public health. So about me, I grew up in a small hometown called Camden, Mississippi. We just recently had a Dollar General put there about 5 years ago, and Walmart is 30 miles away from where I live. We're going to get more into that when I talk about the social ecological model. So you can already tell that my access and exposure coming up wasn't that great. Then when I moved out of my hometown, I got my Bachelor of Science in Kinesiology at Mississippi College in 2010. And then in 2014, I earned my Master of Science in Exercise Science at Arkansas State University. And then I got my PhD in Health Education and Promotion at the University of Alabama at Birmingham. And my key roles, I was a fitness specialist, which is another fancy word for personal trainer. But instead of just being a personal trainer, I could do stratified risk assessments for persons with special needs. And I did that for a couple of years, and I decided that that wasn't enough, so I became a research coordinator. I went and got my Master of Science at Arkansas State University and decided to be a researcher and go into research coordination. And then I became an adjunct instructor at the University of Alabama at Birmingham to take everything that I learned and applied it to all aspects of my life, including my career leading up to my business in LLC. All right, it wasn't always like this, as you can see. Started from the bottom. This is how it started. Country, rural, boy from Mississippi. And this is what it's looking like now. This is how it's going. So finally put on the muscle mass, accomplished most of my goals, and I'm still not satisfied. I'm still going, and I am continuing to grow. And I'm gonna give you some tips on how to do that later on. Rural origins. We're gonna start with that ignorance tab. Again, I grew up in country rural Camden, Mississippi. I wasn't exposed to very many things growing up. I wasn't very cultured, and I only knew what I was taught. And that ultimately led to my lack of self-expression. In my community, if you weren't going along to get along and you were just playing a country role of just, not rocking a boat, not asking too many questions, and if you come from a small community like I've come from, where people are small-minded, asking questions and curiosities were taboo at best. And that in turn led to my lack of confidence, because I would often have questions, but I would be ashamed and or afraid to ask these questions to really know more about the world. Because a lot of the people that I grew up with, they were pretty cynical people. There's no other way for me to really put it. And we're just gonna move on here to the social ecological model. And as you can see here, it starts with the individual. Knowledge, skills, attitudes. And This model pretty much explains why it is so very important to be in an environment and have a support group to help nourish and accomplish your goals. Now, I'm not saying that everyone in my community was against me per se. However, it really had an effect on me because the people around me were so small-minded. So from public policy to community, organizational, interpersonal, family, friends, social networks, all of that can have a drastic impact on how you move and how you navigate. So that is what I learned in my doctoral program, because I always asked that question, why? Once I got to college and once I got my degrees, I was always asking, yeah, I want people to exercise and be healthier and be more fit. But having these degrees in exercise science and exercise physiology really wasn't asking that question. So that's why I ended up getting a degree in health education and promotion and learning health behavior change theories. And the social ecological model was the centerpiece of my education. The blinding light of the truth, discomfort. Oh goodness. I'm gonna tie discomfort and fitness and health together. Again, I grew up in a community where I only knew what I was taught. And what I was taught, in order to build muscle mass and to be healthy typically means to be big and heavy. And in order for me to be strong, I had to haul puck wood. Now, yeah, hauling puck wood can make you strong, but there's no fundamental exercise physiology technique to really haul and puck wood. Like, yes, there are ways you can lift heavy objects, but their way of getting stronger was to haul puck wood, do a whole bunch of manual labor, and to eat a bunch of heavy foods that are soaked in fat, high in sodium, loaded in pork. And that ultimately led to the third bullet point here, failure in sports and injuries. I was not well conditioned by the time I started playing sports in junior high and high school. And that really crippled my self-esteem. And that in turn led to the last bullet point, my lack of social life. I was following the format that people were laying out for me that was not adequate for my success, especially as it pertains to mental health and physical health. So that led to a massive chip on my shoulder. And I said, something has got to change. Ambition to success. I am now out of the house at the age of 18. I went to Mississippi College where I learned about kinesiology and nutrition. And then from that point, I started building more confidence. And then I started looking back at my community and I say, hey, you know what? Now that I have this information, I can relay it back to you. And as you can see in the pictures here, people were coming around. There are my martial arts instructors right there in the middle. I started participating in martial arts. And of course, there's a happy ending here. Once I got out of that community and got an exposure, proper exposure with the right people, everything just spearheaded pretty much into success. Now, of course, it wasn't always easy. It wasn't always smooth. So once I learned about physiology and everything of that sort, I started practicing martial arts at Arkansas State University, and then I became more fit and more knowledgeable. And then I decided, even after getting my master's and becoming a martial arts champion, I have my plaque right here, 2013, as you can see. That was not good enough for me. So I decided to pursue the doctorate. And the PhD conquest was extremely arduous, let me tell you. But once I finished, I came out a new man and I decided to take risk. Now, the reason I titled this The Warrior's Way is because being a warrior isn't so much physical. Wars and battles are won up here. It starts up here. And where I come from, I'm going to be transparent with you. I wasn't very strong up here, but I knew that I had to change. I had the desire to be faster, stronger, and smarter, more intelligent, because I want the people around me, my network, to come up. The law of averages, if you will. So if I bring myself up, then maybe other people will come up, right? It's not always the case. So there were some harsh lessons that had to be learned. And once I moved on, some people came along with me, some people were left behind. But I didn't let that stop me. The people that were left behind, I wish them well. But hey, maybe one day they'll turn around. One can only hope. So after I finished my doctorate and decided to pursue my business endeavors, I started writing my book, telling my story, telling my tale and how I got here, because I knew that there is a kid similar to myself in a rural town. It doesn't necessarily have to be a rural town, but in a town full of small-minded people. If you remember what I just spoke about in the social ecological model, that needs someone to give them that blinding light of truth and say, hey, it doesn't have to be this way. Your past failures or your past negative feelings about yourself doesn't necessarily have to be indicative of your future success. And don't be afraid to fail. This is what I talk about here in this book, and talking about risk taking and getting outside of my comfort zone. That is the warrior's way. Yes, and here's a physical copy of it right here. It's going to be released pretty soon. Just moving forward. Here are my keys to success. Forget about perfection. Look, social media, I know, has created this false narrative that everyone is doing a jam-up job on everything 100% of the time. Everything is squeaky clean. No, those pictures and those posts, it's a snapshot in time. And we all know, and if you don't know, you're going to soon find out that life can change at the drop of a dime. It can change in a matter of seconds. So don't worry so much about perfection. Just jump in, do it. Don't procrastinate. Go get after it. Don't be afraid to fail. Be present. This was something that I really struggled in personally as I was coming up. I was too caught up in my past, the negativity of my past. Like, why did these people treat me this way? Why wasn't I able to accomplish this goal? Why wasn't I able to accomplish that goal? What was wrong with me? All of that in the past, I had to leave that behind. And then I would skip over the present and go straight into the future. And then I'm judging my future, something that hasn't even occurred yet, based on what I had gone through. So I'm not present. I'm traumatized by the past. And I'm anxious about the future. You talk about a psychological rock in a hard place, but be present. Get focused. What about now? Just stop, close my eyes, and breathe. I'm encouraging you to do the same thing. Stop, close your eyes, and breathe. And just think, what do I want? Where do I want to be? Visualize it and put forth little actions, which leads to my next bullet point. Stay focused on simple goals first. You eat an elephant, one spoon at a time. The best way, and this is what my instructor taught me at Mississippi College, one of my professors, Dr. Scott Long, one of the things that stuck with me is he said, the best way to multitask, which is another mistake that I would often make, I would try to do too much at one time. Then I wasn't committed to any one thing, and then I just failed at everything because I was spread too thin. He told me the best way to multitask is to do one thing at a time. Focus on one thing at a time. Keep your goals fundamental. What is the end game here? Because you don't want to just think about yourself. Yeah, think about yourself, but what are you going to contribute to the world? And that leads into growing a solid network. What if I told you that it wasn't until just a couple of years ago that I learned the value of having a solid network? Because I had that chip on my shoulder because of I was a different child coming up in my community that had questions and ideas, and people weren't listening to me. I thought that I can do everything by myself. No. If you go into your goals or pursue your endeavors with that mindset, you're almost sure to fail. Now, there are a lot of things that you can and need to do on your own, but I would not suggest that. If you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, go with a group. And if I go back in time and tell myself this, I would probably just spit on me because I was not that guy back in the day. But again, it just comes with growth and repetition. Do it over and over and over. Being present, listening to your gut, repetition, repetition, repetition. And I heard another speaker in this conference earlier this morning. They said, this individual said that the most dominant people, Mr. Anderson, if I'm not mistaken, the most dominant people aren't always the most talented. They aren't the biggest, they aren't the fastest, they aren't necessarily the smartest, but they are the ones that continue to push forward. They continue to grind. They do certain things on task. They're disciplined and they just proceed and push forward and progress and persevere through doing simple things and being present. And one final lesson, as you continue to pursue your goals, remember that you are human. Don't lose touch of that. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. And I thought this image right here was pretty funny because as I'm sitting down, being present in the moment, thinking about my goals, thinking about my business, thinking about my book, thinking about my public speaking, how I'm going to help my family, my immediate family, how am I going to continue to build and establish relationships to better promote myself and my brand? While I'm in this meditative state, as the meme implies, your past is not indicative of your future. Just at the same time, your past is a part of who you are. Because if you're not cognizant of your past or history, then you're more likely and prone to repeat the same mistakes, and you will doom your future. So whenever you have that little slither, as you can see right here, while Marion is meditating, there's that little Ike Turner there. And no, I do not condone Ike Turner, nor do I have Ike Turner-like ways as portrayed in the movie. What's love got to do with it? But just understand that even if you have that little slither moment, refocus and get back into it. And any questions for me? And this is my contact information. This is my website, www.drdeanbeamon.com. I do public speaking and I do bookings. You can check me out, check my background and credentials. And that's pretty much my history. And I'm proud to be here. I'm glad to be here at this conference. I really thank you all for having me. And again, if you have any questions, please feel free to ask. All right, well, there's my contact information. I hope you all were able to catch that. And again, visit my webpage and website, and I try to get to my emails and my contact as quickly as possible. And again, Mr. Seneca Wilson, great conference. And I really thank you for having me on this panel among great speakers. You all have a great day.